The airport security footage would later show the exact moment everything changed. Dr. Isaiah Thompson being dragged down the aircraft aisle, his briefcase spilling documents marked, Federal Aviation Administration Confidential. The flight attendant's face went pale. She had just made the worst mistake of her career, and 20,000 passengers were about to pay the price. Before we dive into this incredible story, drop a comment below telling us where you're watching from. If you believe in justice and accountability, smash that like button and subscribe so you never miss stories like this. Trust me, what happens next will shock you. Let's get into it. Newark Liberty International Airport hummed with its usual Tuesday morning chaos. Gate C-47 buzzed with travelers heading to Atlanta, most scrolling phones or sipping overpriced coffee while waiting to board Skywing Airlines Flight 2847. Among them sat Dr. Isaiah Thompson, a man whose calm exterior betrayed nothing of the storm about to unfold. Isaiah arrived 90 minutes early, as he always did. His tailored navy suit fit perfectly, the kind of professional appearance that came from 3 decades in aviation. At 52, his close-cropped hair showed distinguished gray at the temples. He carried 2 items, a sleek laptop bag and a leather briefcase worn smooth from years of travel. Inside that briefcase sat documents that could change everything. He was a federal aviation safety consultant, one of the most respected in the nation. The briefcase contained his preliminary report on Skywing Airlines, months of investigation condensed into damning evidence of safety violations. He was flying to Atlanta for an emergency FAA meeting where he'd present findings that could ground 30% of Skywing's fleet. The irony of flying Skywing to deliver that report wasn't lost on him. First-class ticket, seat 2A. Isaiah boarded in the priority group, nodding politely to the flight attendant stationed at the aircraft door. They smiled back, professional and distant. He found his seat, stowed his laptop in the overhead bin, and settled in with his briefcase at his feet. The cabin filled slowly. Isaiah opened his laptop, pulling up the presentation he'd rehearsed a dozen times. Charts showing maintenance irregularities. Graphs tracking falsified inspection records. Names of whistleblowers who'd risked their careers to come forward. This wasn't just data. This was evidence of corporate negligence that put lives at risk. Flight attendant Jessica Monroe began pre-flight service in first class. 28 years old, blonde hair pulled into the regulation bun, 3 years with Skywing. She moved down the aisle taking drink orders with practiced efficiency. "Coffee, please." "Black," Isaiah said when she reached his row. "Of course, sir." She returned moments later with a steaming cup. Isaiah thanked her and returned to his work, reviewing the section about aircraft tail number N2847SK. The specific plane he was sitting on. His brow furrowed reading the maintenance logs he'd obtained through federal channels. This aircraft was overdue for critical inspections. He made a mental note to flag it specifically in his presentation. The overhead bins filled as more passengers boarded. Economy class was packed, families heading south for spring break, business travelers like himself. The usual mix of humanity compressed into an aluminum tube. Isaiah stood briefly to help an elderly woman struggling with her carry-on bag. She thanked him warmly. He smiled, lifted it easily into the overhead compartment, and returned to his seat. Just being a decent human being. Nothing remarkable. Then Jessica approached again, but her expression had changed. The professional smile looked forced now, tight around the edges. "Sir, we're going to need you to check that briefcase." Isaiah looked up from his screen, confused. "I'm sorry." "Your briefcase. Company policy requires all bags to fit under the seat or in the overhead bin. You'll need to check it." He glanced at the briefcase, then at the space under seat 2A. "It fits perfectly under the seat. See?" He demonstrated, sliding it easily into place. Jessica's jaw tightened. "That's not the point, sir. I need you to comply with crew instructions." Isaiah kept his voice calm, reasonable. I understand, but the briefcase does fit under the seat. It contains time-sensitive federal documents that must stay with me. Sir, I don't make the rules. I'm just enforcing them. He looked around first class. 3 other passengers had similar-sized bags under their seats. Briefcases, purses, laptop bags. None of them were being challenged. All 3 passengers were white. Ma'am, with respect, I've been flying for 30 years. This briefcase meets all size requirements. It's staying with me. Jessica's face flushed. Without another word, she turned and walked toward the galley. Isaiah returned to his laptop, uneasy now. Something felt wrong. 5 minutes passed. The main cabin door was still open, passengers still boarding. Then Jessica returned, but not alone. A supervisor followed her, a tall white man in his mid-40s with the bearing of someone who enjoyed authority. Sir, I'm Craig Hendricks, cabin supervisor. We have a problem passenger situation here. Isaiah closed his laptop slowly. There's no problem, Mr. Hendricks. My bag fits under the seat as required. Are you refusing to follow crew instructions? I'm following all regulations. My bag complies with size restrictions. It contains federal documents related to aviation safety that cannot be checked. Craig leaned in, lowering his voice but not the hostility. Listen, I don't care if you're carrying the nuclear codes. You follow our rules or you're off this plane. Clear. Other passengers were watching now. Phones coming out of pockets. Isaiah noticed he was the only black passenger in first class. The only black passenger being confronted. I'd like to speak with a gate supervisor, please. This seems like a misunderstanding that can be resolved. Craig straightened. Too late for that. He pulled out his radio. Gate C-47, we need airport security. Uncooperative passenger refusing crew instructions. Immediate removal required. Isaiah's heart sank. He'd seen this movie before. Knew how it ended. But he kept his voice steady, his hands visible, his demeanor calm. Sir, this is unnecessary. I'm happy to speak with anyone to resolve this. You should have thought about that before refusing to comply. Craig crossed his arms, standing guard as if Isaiah might flee. The other first-class passengers exchanged uncomfortable glances. One woman, white, probably 60, spoke up. Excuse me, but his bag is the same size as mine. I don't understand the issue. Craig ignored her completely. 2 minutes of tense silence. Then 3 airport security officers appeared in the forward galley, moving with purpose down the jet bridge. The lead security officer was Derek Mills, 38, with the build of a former college linebacker and the attitude of someone who'd never questioned an order. He filled the first-class aisle, eyes locked on Isaiah. Sir, you need to deplane immediately. Isaiah remained seated, hands folded. Officer, I'm Dr. Isaiah Thompson, a federal aviation safety consultant. There's been a misunderstanding about my carry-on bag. That's what they all say. Derek's hand moved to his belt, near the handcuffs. Let's go. Don't make this difficult. I'm not making anything difficult. I'd like to gather my belongings and deplane voluntarily if that's necessary. I just need to understand what regulation I've violated. You're being removed for interfering with the flight crew. Derek reached for Isaiah's arm. Isaiah pulled back instinctively. Please don't touch me. I'll stand up and leave on my own. Too late for that. Craig's voice dripped with satisfaction. You refused a lawful order. You're being removed for cause. Derek grabbed Isaiah's upper arm, gripped tight enough to bruise. Another officer moved in from the other side. Isaiah's briefcase tumbled from under the seat as they hauled him up, spilling across the first-class cabin floor. Papers scattered everywhere. Documents stamped confidential. FAA letterhead. Maintenance reports. Jessica quickly kicked several pages under nearby seats, face flushed with what might have been shame or anger. My briefcase. Those are federal documents. You'll get it back at security. Derek and his partner dragged Isaiah backward down the aisle. Passengers gasped. A child started crying. Isaiah didn't resist physically, but he wasn't making it easy either, his feet dragging, his weight making them work for every inch. This is wrong, someone shouted. He didn't do anything. I'm recording this, another voice called out. The security team ignored everyone. They pulled Isaiah through first class into economy, past 300 horrified faces. His jacket tore at the shoulder seam. His glasses went crooked, nearly falling off. Complete humiliation on display for everyone. I want your names and badge numbers, Isaiah managed between gasps. The grip on his arms was cutting off circulation. You're in no position to demand anything, Derek growled. They reached the forward galley. The pilots watched from the cockpit doorway, saying nothing. The lead flight attendant looked away. Isaiah locked eyes with Jessica for just a moment. She couldn't hold his gaze. Down the jet bridge, Isaiah's knees scraping the carpet as they dragged him. Passengers waiting at the gate stared in shock. Airport employees pretended not to see. The whole terrible spectacle playing out in public while everyone looked away. Into the terminal. Security office tucked between gates. They shoved Isaiah into a small holding room, institutional gray walls and fluorescent lights. He stumbled, caught himself against a metal desk. Wait here. Derek snatched Isaiah's phone from his pocket. You can't take my phone without cause. We just did. The briefcase came next, then his laptop bag. You'll get everything back when we're done processing you. The door slammed. Lock clicked. Isaiah stood alone in the small room, chest heaving, adrenaline flooding his system. He straightened his torn jacket, adjusted his glasses, tried to collect himself. Through the small window, he watched Flight 2847 push back from the gate. On time. They'd removed him and carried on like nothing happened. Like dragging a black man off an airplane was just another Tuesday. 45 minutes passed. Isaiah sat in the plastic chair, forcing himself to breathe slowly, to think clearly. His mind catalogued everything. Every face, every word, every illegal action. He was a federal consultant. He knew aviation law better than anyone in that airport. And they'd just violated about a dozen regulations. The door finally opened. Derek entered with another man, older, wearing an airport police chief's uniform. Dr. Thompson. The chief's voice carried genuine discomfort. I'm Chief Sullivan. We've reviewed the security footage of the incident on the aircraft. And you're free to go. We apologize for the inconvenience. Isaiah stood slowly, every muscle tense. Inconvenience. I was assaulted, illegally detained, and robbed of federal property. Chief Sullivan winced. I understand you're upset, but do you understand what just happened? I'm a federal aviation consultant carrying classified documents. Your officers, at the request of airline employees, physically removed me from an aircraft for the crime of being black with a briefcase. Sir, I'm sure race had nothing to do with. Don't. Isaiah's voice cut like a blade. Don't insult my intelligence. I've been flying for 30 years. I know exactly what this was. His belongings sat on the desk. Phone, briefcase, laptop. Isaiah checked the briefcase. The documents were shuffled, disorganized, clearly searched. Whoever looked through them had no idea what they were reading. No apology came from Skywing. No representative even showed up. They'd removed the problem and moved on. Isaiah gathered his things with deliberate care, Chief Sullivan, I'm going to need written documentation of this incident. Incident report, security footage, witness statements. Everything. Dr. Thompson, I don't think. That wasn't a request. Under federal aviation regulations, I have the right to documentation of any security incident involving federal officials. You have 24 hours to provide it. He walked out of the security office, through the terminal, straight to airport administration. His hands were steady now, his mind crystal clear. Rage had crystallized into purpose. The administration office provided a private conference room. Secure phone line. Privacy. Isaiah made 3 phone calls. First, FAA Director Margaret Chen. Margaret, it's Isaiah. I need to report an incident. Second, Department of Transportation Inspector General. This is Dr. Thompson. I'm filing a formal complaint of civil rights violations and obstruction of federal duties. Third, his attorney, David Chen. David, clear your schedule. We've got work to do. Each call was brief, precise, devastating. Isaiah laid out facts without emotion. What happened, when, who was involved, what came next. By the time he hung up the third call, wheels were already turning in Washington. Flight 2847 was somewhere over Pennsylvania by now. Passengers who'd witnessed his removal probably sharing videos already. Social media starting to buzz. But Isaiah wasn't thinking about publicity. He was thinking about the maintenance report in his briefcase. About aircraft N-2847SK flying with passengers on board. About the safety violations he'd spent 6 months documenting. About how Skywing had just made this very, very personal. They wanted to drag him off a plane. Fine. He was about to drag their entire operation into the light. To understand what happened next, you need to understand who Isaiah Thompson really was. Not just a man with a briefcase. Not just another passenger. He was a weapon of accountability that Skywing had just armed against themselves. Rewind 28 years. Isaiah Thompson graduated top of his class from the Air Force Academy in 1994, 24 years old with perfect vision and sharper instincts. He flew fighter jets through 2 deployments, earned decorations for valor, became the youngest captain in his squadron. The military taught him precision, discipline, and an uncompromising commitment to safety protocols. Transition to commercial aviation came naturally. By 30, he was flying for a major carrier. By 35, he was their youngest captain. The career trajectory looked perfect. Then came October 2008. Flight 447, Los Angeles to Chicago. Isaiah was deadheading, sitting in the jump seat observing a colleague. Routine flight until the left engine started showing unusual vibrations. The captain continued anyway. Company pressure to maintain schedules, avoid delays, keep costs down. Isaiah urged him to land immediately. The captain refused. At 37,000 feet, the engine disintegrated. Shrapnel tore through the fuselage. Explosive decompression. Hydraulic failures cascading through multiple systems. The aircraft became a falling brick with 200 souls aboard. Isaiah helped fight for control, using every skill from his military days. They managed a crash landing at a regional airport. The fuselage broke apart on impact. Isaiah survived with minor injuries. 3 crew members died. 60 passengers were hospitalized, some with permanent disabilities. The investigation revealed everything. The airline had been falsifying maintenance records for years. Cost-cutting measures disguised as efficiency. That engine should have been replaced months earlier. Inspections signed off without work performed. All to save money and maintain schedules. Isaiah testified against the airline. His testimony was devastating, unshakable, impossible to discredit. A decorated military pilot and commercial captain laying out systematic fraud. The airline fought back hard, tried to scapegoat the dead crew, but Isaiah wouldn't let them. He had documentation, witnesses, proof. The airline lost billions in settlements. Their CEO resigned in disgrace. New regulations emerged from the wreckage. And Isaiah left flying forever. Couldn't sit in a cockpit without seeing those 3 crew members' faces. Couldn't trust airlines that put profit over safety. So he went back to school. MIT, PhD in aviation safety engineering. Became the thing airlines feared most, an expert who couldn't be intimidated, bought, or silenced. The FAA hired him as an independent consultant. His job was simple: find problems before they killed people. Over 15 years, Isaiah's reports had grounded 5 airlines, forced 12 CEO resignations, and saved countless lives. He was thorough to the point of obsession. When he found safety violations, he documented everything, built cases that couldn't be disputed. Airlines hated him. Passengers owed him their lives and never knew it. Now, back in the present, Isaiah sat in the airport hotel conference room surrounded by the tools of his trade. His junior consultant team had driven from Atlanta through the night, arriving at dawn with 12 boxes of evidence. 5 brilliant analysts, all trained by Isaiah, all as relentless as their mentor. Documents spread across every surface. Maintenance logs obtained through federal subpoenas. Whistleblower statements. Safety inspection reports. Financial records showing suspicious cost-cutting patterns. 6 months of investigation into Skywing Airlines crystallized into damning proof. Isaiah's phone buzzed. FAA Director Margaret Chin calling back. Isaiah, I just watched the video. It's going viral. Are you okay? He touched the bruises forming on his arms where security had grabbed him. I'm fine, Margaret. But Skywing won't be. Talk to me. What do you have? Isaiah opened his briefcase, pulled out the executive summary. Evidence of falsified maintenance records on 43 aircraft. Multiple engine inspections signed off without work performed. Hydraulic system checks completed while aircraft were documented at different airports. Physically impossible unless the mechanics had teleportation. Margaret went silent on the other end. She understood the implications immediately. Isaiah, how solid is this evidence? Ironclad. Cross-referenced maintenance logs with mechanic timesheets, GPS data from airport security, parts inventory records. I have mechanics who'll testify they were ordered to falsify records or lose their jobs. How bad is the safety risk? Isaiah hesitated, weighing his words. I was going to recommend a 60-day corrective action period. Give them time to inspect everything properly, fix the problems, implement oversight. Fines and management changes, but keep them operational. Was going to. They dragged me off a plane, Margaret. For being black and carrying evidence of their crimes. This isn't just about safety violations anymore. This is about a corporate culture so corrupt they'll assault federal officials to protect their bottom line. Another pause. What are you recommending now? Emergency inspection of their entire fleet. Immediate grounding until every aircraft is certified safe. And I want criminal investigators looking at who knew what and when. Margaret exhaled slowly. Isaiah, that's nuclear. You're talking about grounding a major airline. Hundreds of flights daily. Tens of thousands of passengers stranded. Economic impact in the billions. I'm talking about preventing another Flight 447. How many lives is their convenience worth? She didn't answer immediately. Isaiah could hear papers shuffling, probably pulling up Skywing's operation statistics. Finally, walk me through your worst-case scenario. Isaiah pulled up his laptop, accessed the maintenance database his team had compiled. Aircraft tail number N2847SK. The plane they dragged me off of. It's currently airborne with 198 souls on board. And Left engine due for critical inspection 3 months ago. Work order shows inspection completed, signed off by mechanic named Robert Torres. But Torres was documented at a different airport that entire week. Someone forged his signature. How overdue is this inspection? Isaiah's stomach tightened. 400 flight hours past recommended service interval. Engine failure probability increases exponentially after 200 hours overdue. Margaret's voice dropped to a whisper. Jesus, Isaiah. That plane is flying right now. Over Pennsylvania, scheduled to land in Atlanta in 90 minutes. Can you prove the falsification right now, this minute? Not in a report, not in a hearing. Right now. Isaiah's team was already moving, pulling documents. His lead analyst, Jennifer Park, spread maintenance logs across the table beside mechanic employment records and airport security timestamps. Everything lined up perfectly. The fraud was undeniable. Yes. I can prove it right now. Send me everything. I'm issuing an emergency operations order. All Skywing aircraft currently airborne are to land at the nearest suitable airport immediately. No Skywing aircraft may take off until further notice. God help us if you're wrong about this. I'm not wrong. I'm never wrong about this. Isaiah hung up and looked at his team. 5 faces staring back, understanding the magnitude of what just happened. They'd spent months building a case for gradual reform. Now, in one decision, they were about to shut down an entire airline. Jennifer spoke first. Boss, you sure about this? Once this goes public, there's no walking it back. Isaiah thought about 3 crew members who died in 2008 because an airline chose profit over safety. Thought about 60 passengers who'd never fully recover from their injuries. Thought about being dragged down an aircraft aisle like a criminal for trying to do his job. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. Skywing made this personal. Now it's professional. Now it's justice. Isaiah's phone became a command center. FAA Emergency Operations patched him into air traffic control, Skywing corporate, and federal regulators simultaneously. The next 30 minutes would determine if people lived or died. This is Dr. Isaiah Thompson, FAA Senior Consultant, Authorization Code Alpha 7 Tango 9. I need immediate contact with Skywing Flight 2847. The operations controller's voice crackled back, professional but tense. Dr. Thompson, confirm nature of emergency. Aircraft N2847SK has documented maintenance fraud. Critical engine inspection overdue by 400 flight hours. High probability of catastrophic failure. Require immediate diversion to nearest suitable airport. Silence on the line. Then, stand by, patching through to air traffic control. ATC Cleveland Center came online. Skywing 2847, this is Cleveland Center. We have a potential maintenance issue flagged by FAA. Advise you divert to Pittsburgh International as precautionary measure. The captain's voice sounded annoyed. Cleveland, Skywing 2847. All systems showing green. No mechanical issues indicated. Request clarification on nature of problem. 2847, FAA is reporting possible maintenance irregularities on your aircraft. Recommend precautionary landing Pittsburgh. Negative, Cleveland. We're not diverting a full flight without concrete cause. Unless you're declaring an emergency, we're continuing to Atlanta. Isaiah grabbed the radio. Captain, this is Dr. Isaiah Thompson, FAA Aviation Safety Consultant. Your left engine is 400 hours overdue for critical inspection. The inspection was falsified. You are at extreme risk of engine failure. A new voice cut in, sharp and hostile. Skywing's VP of Operations, Richard Brennan. Who authorized this communication? Thompson, is that you? Mr. Brennan, this is a safety emergency. That aircraft must land immediately. You're the troublemaker from Newark. You were removed from that flight for interfering with crew operations, and now you're interfering with our entire system? Isaiah's jaw clenched. I was removed from that flight for being black and carrying evidence of your company's fraud. Evidence I'm looking at right now. Your mechanic Robert Torres allegedly inspected that engine 3 months ago. But Torres was documented at LaGuardia that entire week. Someone forged his signature to avoid pulling the aircraft from service. That's absurd. Our maintenance is impeccable. You're harassing us because your ego got bruised. Well, congratulations, you've just cost yourself your career. Our lawyers will bury you. Ground that aircraft, Brennan. If that engine fails and people die, I'll make sure you spend the rest of your life in prison. Screw you, Thompson. We're not diverting. Cleveland Center, Skywing 2847 is continuing to Atlanta unless you have an actual emergency declaration. The line went dead. Brennan had hung up. The captain, taking orders from corporate, maintained course for Atlanta. Isaiah stared at the flight tracker on his screen. Flight 2847, a tiny airplane icon over Pennsylvania, blinking steadily as it carried 198 people toward potential disaster. Now let me ask you something. If you were in Isaiah's position, knowing what he knew, would you let that flight continue? Comment number 1 if you think he did the right thing pushing for that grounding, even knowing thousands of passengers would be stranded. And if this story is getting your blood pumping, hit that like button and subscribe because this is about to get intense. What do you think happens when corporate greed meets someone who refuses to back down? Margaret Chen's voice cut through his thoughts. Isaiah, I heard the exchange. Brennan's refusing to cooperate. Then we go over his head. You have the authority to ground them. I do. But Isaiah, listen to me carefully. If I issue an emergency grounding order for an entire airline based on your evidence, and nothing happens, it will be the biggest overreach in FAA history. Congress will have my head. Yours too. And if we don't ground them and that engine fails? Margaret didn't answer immediately. Isaiah could hear the weight of the decision crushing her. Thousands of passengers stranded versus potential catastrophic failure. Economic disaster versus loss of life. The impossible calculus of safety regulation. Send me the proof. Everything. I need absolute certainty. Isaiah's team moved like a surgical unit. Jennifer pulled the maintenance log showing Robert Torres' signature. Marcus Williams cross-referenced employment records showing Torres assigned to LaGuardia that week. Keisha Davis pulled airport security footage showing Torres' car entering LaGuardia's employee lot, time-stamped during the exact hours he was supposedly in Newark inspecting engines. Physical impossibility. Clear fraud. Undeniable. Isaiah compiled everything into a single file and sent it to Margaret. Check your secure email. Proof attached. 3 minutes of silence. Longest 3 minutes of Isaiah's life. He watched Flight 2847's icon move across the screen. Over Harrisburg now. Descending gradually toward its cruising altitude handoff. Margaret's voice came back, harder now, decided. I've reviewed the evidence. Issuing emergency operations order under 49 U.S.C. Section 44709. All Skywing Airlines flights currently airborne are ordered to land at the nearest suitable airport immediately. No Skywing aircraft may depart until further notice. Effective immediately. Isaiah closed his eyes, relief and dread washing over him simultaneously. Thank you, Margaret. Don't thank me yet. If you're wrong, we're both finished. I'm not wrong. The order went out across every ATC frequency. 47 Skywing aircraft in flight, scattered across the country, all receiving the same message. Land now. 342 scheduled departures cancelled instantly. 20,000 passengers about to have their travel plans destroyed. News alerts started pinging on phones across America. Breaking, FAA grounds major airline. Media scrambling to understand what was happening. Social media exploding with speculation. Skywing's operations center erupted into chaos. Every dispatcher, every supervisor, every executive scrambling. Their entire network grinding to an immediate halt. The operational nightmare they'd always feared, happening in real time. But Isaiah wasn't watching the chaos. He was watching Flight 2847. Cleveland Center to Skywing 2847, you are ordered to divert immediately to Pittsburgh International. This is an emergency operations order from FAA. Acknowledge. Long pause. Then the captain, anger barely contained, Cleveland, Skywing 2847. Understand divert Pittsburgh on FAA order. This is career-ending overreach, and someone will answer for it. 2847, Roger. Cleared direct Pittsburgh, descend and maintain 15,000. Isaiah pulled up Pittsburgh's weather. Clear skies, light winds. Perfect conditions for an emergency landing. Flight 2847 began its turn, the icon on his screen arcing northwest. 35,000 feet. 30,000. 25,000. Isaiah's team gathered around the monitor, watching in silence. Jennifer's hand found his shoulder, squeezing gently. They all understood what was at stake. If the engine held together, Isaiah would be vindicated but vilified. If it failed, he'd be proven right in the worst possible way. 20,000 feet. 15,000. Flight 2847 on final approach to Pittsburgh. Isaiah held his breath. 10,000 feet. 8,000. 6,000. Then it happened. 6,000 feet above Pittsburgh, the left engine of aircraft N-2847SK tore itself apart. The explosion rocked the cabin like a bomb detonation. Metal shearing, turbine blades disintegrating at supersonic speeds, shrapnel punching through the engine cowling in every direction. Passengers screamed as the aircraft lurched violently to the left. In Newark, Isaiah heard it happen through the ATC frequency. The captain's voice, calm professionalism shattered by raw fear, Mayday, Mayday, Mayday. Skywing 2847, catastrophic left engine failure, losing altitude, declaring emergency. 2847, Pittsburgh Tower, roger your Mayday. All runways cleared, emergency equipment rolling. Souls on board. 198 souls. Heavy damage, multiple system failures. Shrapnel penetrated fuselage, we have decompression, hydraulic pressure dropping. Isaiah's hands gripped the table edge, knuckles white. His worst prediction coming true in real time. He'd been right. God, how he wished he'd been wrong. Jennifer gasped beside him. Marcus stood frozen, hands covering his mouth. Keisha was crying silently. They'd spent months documenting maintenance fraud as abstract violations, numbers on spreadsheets. Now those numbers had names, faces, families. 198 souls fighting for their lives. The ATC frequency crackled with controlled urgency. 2847, wind calm, altimeter 3012, runway 28 left cleared to land, equipment standing by. Roger, attempting 28 left, limited control authority, hydraulics failing. On flight 2847, chaos reigned. Oxygen masks dropped from overhead compartments. Parents clutched children. Business travelers gripped armrests with white knuckles. Flight attendants, training overriding terror, shouted instructions over screaming passengers. The captain and first officer fought the dying aircraft with everything they had. The right engine screamed at maximum thrust, trying to compensate for the destroyed left. But shrapnel had severed critical hydraulic lines. Control surfaces responding sluggishly, inconsistently. 4,000 feet. The captain could see Pittsburgh International now, emergency vehicles lining the runway, red and white lights flashing like a Christmas display from hell. 3,000 feet. Airspeed too high. Descent rate too fast. But no choice now except to get this bird on the ground before it fell from the sky. 2,000 feet. First officer calling out altitudes, speed, descent rate. Numbers that should be steady but kept fluctuating wildly. The aircraft porpoising, nose up then down, fighting every input. 1,000 feet. Runway threshold approaching. Too fast, too steep, but the only shot they had. 500 feet. The captain hauled back on the yoke, desperate to arrest the descent. The nose came up. Tail dropped. Speed bleeding off finally. 200 feet. 100 feet. 50. The main landing gear hit runway 28 left like a sledgehammer. Tires exploded from the impact. The entire airframe shuddered. Passengers thrown against seatbelts. Overhead bins bursting open, luggage raining down. The captain stood on the brakes. Anti-skid system screaming. Thrust reversers deployed on the remaining engine, asymmetric thrust trying to spin the aircraft. He fought it, corrected, fought it again. Smoking, shaking, systems failing, aircraft N-2847SK careened down the runway at Pittsburgh International. Veering right, the captain overcorrected left. Speed still too high. Runway running out. The nose gear collapsed. Metal scraping concrete in a shower of sparks. The aircraft slewed sideways, departing the runway onto grass. Dirt and debris erupting in a brown cloud. Finally, mercifully, 200 feet from the terminal building, the crippled aircraft ground to a stop. Emergency evacuation. Slides deployed. Flight attendants shouting, "Jump and slide. Jump and slide." Passengers tumbling out, running across grass, parents carrying children, elderly helped by strangers. 90 seconds from stop to last person off. Training and adrenaline overcoming panic. 15 injuries. Sprained ankles from evacuation slides. 1 broken wrist. Several people hyperventilating. But everyone alive. Every single one of the 198 souls survived. In Newark, Isaiah collapsed into his chair, hands shaking uncontrollably. The ATC frequency confirmed, all passengers and crew evacuated safely. Medical treating minor injuries. Aircraft a total loss but no fatalities. No fatalities. The words echoed in his mind. No fatalities because he'd pushed for that grounding. Because Margaret had trusted him. Because they'd forced that aircraft down before it reached cruising altitude where engine failure meant certain death. If Flight 2847 had continued to Atlanta as scheduled, the engine would have failed at 35,000 feet over rural West Virginia. No airports nearby. No chance of successful landing. Absolute catastrophe. Isaiah had saved 198 lives. But he took no satisfaction in it. Only relief mixed with rage at the corporation that had made this necessary. His phone exploded with notifications. News breaking everywhere. Video footage from Pittsburgh showing the smoking wreckage. Passengers on grass, emergency vehicles surrounding the aircraft. Dramatic, terrifying, miraculous. Then someone made the connection. Social media erupting with realization. The man dragged off this exact flight just hours earlier was the same man who ordered it grounded and saved everyone aboard. Video of Isaiah being dragged down the aisle went viral all over again. But now with context. Now with understanding. The black man they'd assaulted was trying to save their lives. Within 30 minutes, the video had 50 million views. #Justice for Isaiah trending worldwide. The narrative shifting from passenger removal to corporate conspiracy. Skywing stock price began its death spiral. CEO Gregory Hartman called an emergency press conference. 60 years old, silver hair, expensive suit, the picture of corporate authority crumbling in real time. Sweat beaded on his forehead under the camera lights. This incident is currently under investigation. Skywing Airlines takes safety extremely seriously. We're cooperating fully with federal authorities to determine what happened and why. Reporter from the front row, Mr. Hartman, your crew physically removed Dr. Isaiah Thompson from this exact flight. He's the federal aviation consultant who discovered the maintenance fraud that caused this engine failure. How do you explain that? Gregory stumbled over his words. That was an unfortunate misunderstanding. The crew was following standard procedures regarding passenger compliance. Another reporter, standard procedures that involve dragging a federal safety official off a plane while he's carrying evidence of your safety violations. I can't comment on ongoing investigations. Your VP of operations called Dr. Thompson a troublemaker just hours before this engine exploded. Do you stand by that characterization? Gregory's face flushed red. Richard Brennan's comments were made without full information. We're reviewing all communication protocols. Dr. Thompson is a decorated Air Force veteran and MIT PhD who's spent 15 years preventing aviation disasters. Your company assaulted him. Your executives dismissed his warnings. Then the exact problem he identified nearly killed 200 people. What do you have to say to him? Silence. Gregory Hartman had no answer. The press conference collapsed into chaos, reporters shouting questions, cameras flashing. The CEO fled the podium, leaving only the wreckage of his credibility behind. Skywing stock price plummeted 38% in after-hours trading. Billions in market value evaporating. Major investors demanding answers, accountability, blood. In Newark, Isaiah sat in a conference room watching the news coverage with his team. His phone kept ringing. CNN, NBC, CBS, ABC, New York Times, Washington Post. Everyone wanted his story. He answered none of them. Just sat quietly, thinking about how close they'd come. 200 feet. That's how close Flight 2847 came to hitting the terminal building. Inches and seconds between survival and catastrophe. His attorney David Chen arrived from Manhattan, barely an hour after the Pittsburgh landing. Asian American, 48 years old, one of the nation's top civil rights lawyers. He'd represented victims of discrimination for 25 years and never lost a case this clear-cut. David sat down across from Isaiah, studying his friend's face. You know what this means. Isaiah looked up, exhausted. I didn't do this for revenge, David. I did it to save lives. I know. But they racially profiled you, physically assaulted you, dismissed your expertise, and you turned out to be exactly right about everything. Isaiah, this is the civil rights case of the decade. Maybe the century. People could have died. But they didn't. Because of you. Because you refused to back down when they tried to silence you. David pulled out his tablet, started making notes. We're talking systemic discrimination, assault, obstruction of federal duties, defamation. The damages alone will be historic. Isaiah shook his head. I don't want their money. This isn't about money. It's about accountability. It's about making sure this never happens again to anyone else. Through the window, Isaiah could see aircraft taking off from Newark. Normal operations continuing while Skywing's entire network sat grounded. He thought about Jerome Washington, the whistleblower mechanic who'd lost everything trying to expose this fraud. Thought about how many mechanics had been threatened, fired, silenced. How many people did we save today, David? David checked his phone, scanning news reports. 198 on that flight. Plus potentially thousands on other Skywing flights with similar maintenance issues. The FAA is inspecting their entire fleet. They're finding problems on dozens of aircraft. Isaiah closed his eyes. Then it was worth it. All of it. But even as he said it, the bruises on his arms throbbed. The torn jacket hung over his chair. The humiliation of being dragged down that aisle played on repeat in his mind. Justice was coming, yes. Vindication too. But the wound of that moment would take longer to heal than any lawsuit could address. The question now was simple: would Skywing face real consequences, or would money and lawyers make this disappear like so many corporate scandals before? Isaiah was about to make sure everyone knew the answer. FAA investigators descended on Skywing maintenance facilities like a biblical plague. Newark, Atlanta, Dallas, Phoenix, Seattle. Every major hub. Teams of inspectors with federal authority and zero patience for corporate obstruction. What they found in the first 48 hours exceeded even Isaiah's darkest predictions. Not just one aircraft with falsified maintenance records. Not even the 43 he documented. 127 aircraft across Skywing's fleet had fraudulent inspection records. Systematic, deliberate, corporate-sanctioned fraud spanning 3 full years. The maintenance director, Kyle Patterson, had built an empire of deception. 52 years old, white, 30 years in aviation maintenance. He'd started as a mechanic, worked his way up through legitimate skill and knowledge. Then somewhere along the line, profit replaced principle. Internal emails told the story. Patterson to his regional supervisors: "We're $20 million over budget on maintenance this quarter. Find efficiencies or find new jobs." Efficiencies. Corporate doublespeak for fraud. Mechanics ordered to sign off on inspections without performing them. Engine checks completed on paper while the actual engines never left the aircraft. Hydraulic system tests passed without anyone touching the hydraulics. Safety equipment certified functional without verification. Mechanics who refused were fired immediately. Performance issues, attitude problems, failed to meet productivity standards. The pretexts varied but the outcome was identical. Comply or lose your career. Those who complained faced worse. Blacklisted across the industry. Skywing's HR department maintaining a secret list of troublemakers, shared quietly with other airlines. Professional assassination disguised as networking. The paper trail was damning. Patterson's bonus structure tied directly to staying under budget. Every $1 million saved in maintenance costs meant $50,000 in his pocket. Over 3 years, he'd pocketed $620,000 in bonuses by cutting corners that killed safety margins. But Patterson didn't act alone. His superiors knew. Had to know. The emails proved it. VP of Operations Richard Brennan, the man who'd called Isaiah a troublemaker, sent this message 18 months ago. Kyle, excellent work on Q2 cost management. Board is impressed. Keep finding creative solutions to maximize aircraft utilization. Creative solutions. More doublespeak. More fraud. CFO Andrea Walsh, maintenance spending down 15% year over year. This is exactly the efficiency we need to hit earnings targets. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it. CEO Gregory Hartman never sent explicit orders to falsify records. Too smart for that. But he set the culture, established the priorities, rewarded the behavior. At a board meeting 1 year ago, captured in minutes, our competitors are maintaining aircraft at lower costs. We need to match their efficiency or lose market position. The unspoken message clear: cut costs, don't ask how, just deliver results. And Kyle Patterson delivered. Aircraft that should have been grounded for safety stayed in service. Inspections that should have taken days were completed in hours on paperwork only. Parts that should have been replaced got signed off as functional. The fraud saved Skywing $87 million over 3 years. $87 million in avoided maintenance costs that translated to executive bonuses, shareholder dividends, stock price appreciation. Until aircraft N-2847SK's engine exploded over Pittsburgh. Isaiah had built his case methodically over 6 months. It started with an anonymous email to his secure FAA account. The sender identified himself only as concerned mechanic. The message was brief: Skywing is falsifying maintenance records. People will die if someone doesn't stop them. Isaiah received dozens of tips monthly. Most were disgruntled employees exaggerating minor issues. But something about this one felt different. Specific. Urgent. Real. He responded, "I need proof. Documentation. Evidence I can verify independently." 3 days later, a package arrived at his office. No return address. Inside, copies of maintenance logs with supervisor signatures, cross-referenced with employee timesheets showing those supervisors at different locations when they supposedly performed inspections. Physical impossibility. Either the maintenance logs were wrong or the timesheets were. Either way, fraud. Isaiah started digging. Verified the timesheets through airport security records. Confirmed the maintenance logs through FAA databases. Everything checked out. The fraud was real. He needed the source. Another email: "Meet me in person. I need to verify you're legitimate." They met at a diner in Newark 2 weeks later. That's when Isaiah met Jerome Washington. 44 years old, black, licensed aircraft mechanic for 22 years. Started at age 22 right out of technical school. Worked for 3 different airlines, always excellent reviews, promoted steadily. Joined Skywing 5 years ago as senior mechanic, supervising a team of 8. Jerome was good at his job. Took pride in it. Every inspection thorough, every repair done right, every aircraft leaving his base safer than it arrived. Then Kyle Patterson became his boss. The pressure started gradually. "Jerome, you're taking too long on these inspections. We need to move faster." Jerome pushed back, "These inspections have required time frames for safety reasons." Patterson: "Find a way to be more efficient." Then came the direct orders. "Sign off on this inspection without performing it. Aircraft needs to make its next departure." Jerome refused. "I'm not falsifying federal documents. That's a crime." Patterson's face hardened. "You want to keep your job, you'll do what I tell you." Jerome went to HR, filed a formal complaint. Reported the pressure to falsify records. HR investigated for 2 weeks, then cleared Patterson of all wrongdoing. Jerome's complaint filed under unsubstantiated allegations. 3 weeks later, Jerome was fired. Official reason: failure to meet productivity standards and attitude issues affecting team morale. He tried to find work at other airlines. Every interview went well until they called Skywing for references. Then sudden silence. No callbacks. No offers. Blacklisted. Jerome lost his house 6 months after losing his job. His wife left him 8 months after that, couldn't handle the financial stress and his depression. He moved into his brother's basement, worked odd jobs, barely surviving. But he kept every document. Every email, every maintenance log, every piece of evidence of Skywing's fraud. Waited for someone who would listen, someone who couldn't be bought or intimidated. Then he found Isaiah's name in an aviation safety journal. Read about the 2008 crash testimony, the PhD from MIT, the reputation for being uncompromising. He took a chance and sent that first email. Isaiah verified everything Jerome provided. Cross-referenced with federal databases, interviewed other mechanics confidentially, built an ironclad case. 6 months of work proving systematic fraud across Skywing's entire operation. The plan was to present findings to the FAA committee in Atlanta. Recommend a 60-day corrective action period with fines and management changes. Avoid grounding the airline completely, minimize disruption to innocent passengers. Then Skywing dragged Isaiah off Flight 2847. Changed everything. Made it personal. Made it urgent. Now federal investigators were finding exactly what Jerome and Isaiah had documented, plus more. The fraud went deeper, lasted longer, endangered more lives than even they had known. Department of Transportation Inspector General launched a criminal investigation. FBI joined for wire fraud and conspiracy charges. Prosecutors building cases against Patterson, Brennan, Walsh, potentially Hartman himself. Criminal negligence. Fraud. Obstruction of federal aviation safety regulations. If anyone had died in that Pittsburgh landing, manslaughter charges would be added. The executives started hiring lawyers. White shoe firms, criminal defense specialists, crisis management consultants. Everyone pointing fingers at everyone else. Patterson claimed he was following orders from Brennan. Brennan claimed he never ordered fraud, just efficiency improvements. Walsh claimed she only tracked numbers, didn't know how they were achieved. Hartman claimed he relied on subordinates to handle operational details. The corporate responsibility shell game. Everyone accountable, therefore no one accountable. But the paper trail didn't lie. Emails, memos, board minutes. A clear pattern of pressure from top to bottom, rewards for cost-cutting, punishment for honesty. The fraud wasn't one rogue employee. It was institutional, systematic, encouraged from the executive suite. Meanwhile, another investigation was accelerating. Civil rights organizations diving into Skywing's passenger removal statistics. What they found confirmed what Isaiah already knew. Skywing crews removed black passengers at 6 times the rate of white passengers. For identical infractions, baggage disputes, seat conflicts, behavioral complaints. The disparity was statistically impossible to explain as coincidence. Detailed analysis revealed the pattern. Black passengers questioned about baggage 12 times more often than white passengers with similar bags. Black passengers characterized as threatening or aggressive for behavior that drew no response when white passengers did the same. Black passengers handcuffed and detained while white passengers received verbal warnings. Dozens of other victims came forward after Isaiah's video went viral. Each with their own story of humiliation. A black woman dragged off for allegedly talking too loudly on her phone. Video showed white bachelor party passengers screaming and drinking throughout the flight with no consequences. A black college professor removed for suspicious behavior. His crime, reading an Arabic textbook for his Middle Eastern Studies course. White passengers reading similar academic materials never questioned. A black teenager handcuffed for failing to comply with crew instructions. He'd asked for water during boarding. Flight attendant perceived it as demanding behavior. Story after story. Pattern after pattern. Institutional racism embedded in Skywing's corporate culture as deeply as the maintenance fraud. 2 forms of systemic failure, both rooted in the same poison, profit and prejudice over people and principle. The evidence was overwhelming. The accountability about to be historic. Skywing had built its success on fraud and discrimination. Now the foundation was crumbling, and everyone was about to get buried in the rubble. Skywing's grounding stretched from 1 day to 1 week. FAA inspectors physically examining every aircraft in the fleet before clearing it for return to service. 293 aircraft sitting idle while 800 maintenance technicians worked around the clock. Each day of grounding cost $42 million in lost revenue. After 1 week, $294 million in direct losses. Add cancellation compensation, rebooking costs, hotel vouchers for stranded passengers, and the number doubled. The stock price collapsed. Down 61% from its pre-incident high. Shareholders filing lawsuits. Major institutional investors demanding emergency board meetings. Hedge funds shorting the stock, betting on total collapse. The board of directors gathered in emergency session. 15 members, men and women who'd collected generous fees for years of rubber-stamping management decisions. Now facing potential personal liability for negligent oversight. CEO Gregory Hartman entered the boardroom knowing his career was over. The only question was whether he'd leave with dignity or be thrown out with disgrace. The vote was unanimous. Hartman forced out immediately, no golden parachute, no consulting fees, no face-saving resignation. Terminated for cause. His 30-year aviation career ending in spectacular failure. The entire C-suite followed within 48 hours. VP of Operations Richard Brennan, CFO Andrea Walsh, Chief Operating Officer, General Counsel. Everyone who touched the maintenance fraud or looked the other way while it happened. The board appointed an interim CEO, Keisha Williams. 53 years old, black woman, former Delta Airlines executive with impeccable credentials. 28 years in aviation, reputation for integrity and operational excellence. If anyone could save Skywing, she could. Her first action as CEO was a public apology. Full press conference, every major network carrying it live. Keisha stood at the podium, no notes, speaking from conviction. Dr. Isaiah Thompson, on behalf of Skywing Airlines, I apologize to you unreservedly and without qualification. You were racially profiled by our employees. You were physically assaulted and removed from an aircraft. You were humiliated in front of hundreds of witnesses. Your professional expertise was dismissed. Your dignity was violated. She paused, letting the words sink in. You were right about everything. Our maintenance fraud endangered lives. Our corporate culture enabled discrimination. Our leadership failed at every level. We failed you. We failed our passengers. We failed the flying public's trust. Another pause. I cannot undo what happened to you. I cannot erase that video or take back the harm caused. But I commit to you, and to everyone watching, that I will spend every day working to make this right. Not with words, but with action. Isaiah watched the press conference from his hotel room in Newark. David Chen sat beside him, taking notes. The apology sounded sincere. Keisha Williams had a good reputation, untainted by Skywing's corruption. But words were easy. Action was what mattered. Keisha continued, effective immediately, Skywing is implementing the following changes. 1. Complete overhaul of all maintenance procedures with independent third-party oversight. Every aircraft, every inspection, every repair will be verified by outside auditors. 2. Mandatory anti-racism and anti-bias training for every employee, from flight attendants to executives. Not performative training, but meaningful education with accountability. 3. Third-party audit of every passenger removal incident from the past 5 years. Every case reviewed for evidence of racial profiling or discriminatory enforcement. 4. Creation of an independent passenger advocate office to investigate complaints and ensure fair treatment. 5. Financial compensation for Dr. Thompson commensurate with the harm caused and sufficient to demonstrate our commitment to accountability. The press conference ended. David turned to Isaiah. She's serious. Those commitments are specific, measurable, verifiable. This could actually mean real change. Isaiah remained skeptical. Or it's damage control. Public relations to save the stock price. Maybe. But she put specific actions on record. We can hold her to them. The settlement negotiations began 3 days later. Skywing's lawyers opened with an offer, $2 million, non-disclosure agreement, no admission of wrongdoing beyond the public apology. Isaiah refused immediately. Tell them no. David blinked, surprised. Isaiah, $2 million is serious money. That's 5 years of your salary. I make $400,000 a year as a consultant. I don't need their money. I need justice. What do you want instead? Isaiah had spent 3 days thinking about exactly this question. $15 million to establish a scholarship fund for minority students pursuing aviation safety careers. Full-ride scholarships, 20 students per year, administered by an independent foundation with no Skywing control. David wrote it down. That's reasonable given the harm and their financial position. What else? Public apology without non-disclosure agreement. I want the right to tell this story, testify about it, use it to push for industry reform. No gag order. They'll resist that, but okay. Continue. Termination of every employee involved in my removal. Jessica Monroe, Craig Hendricks, Derek Mills, everyone who touched me or made decisions that led to my assault. Agreed. What else? Independent federal monitor assigned to oversee Skywing operations for 5 years minimum. Someone with authority to ground aircraft, halt operations, impose fines without corporate approval. Real oversight with real teeth. David looked up from his notes. Isaiah, that last one is huge. They'll fight it hard. Then they can fight. Those are my terms. The negotiations stalled immediately. Skywing balked at the scholarship fund amount, the lack of NDA, the employee terminations, especially the federal monitor requirement. Isaiah went public. Interview with 60 Minutes, telling the whole story. Showed the video of being dragged off the aircraft. Explained the maintenance fraud. Detailed Skywing's settlement offer and his counterdemands. They want to pay me to be quiet, Isaiah told the camera. They want to write a check and make this disappear. But I won't be quiet. Too many people have been hurt by corporate cultures that value profit over safety and human dignity. This has to change, and change requires accountability, not hush money. The interview aired Sunday night. 60 million viewers. Social media exploded again. Hashtag boycott Skywing trended worldwide. Civil rights organizations organized formal boycotts. Major corporate clients canceled contracts worth hundreds of millions. Monday morning, Skywing lost a potential merger with Delta Airlines. Negotiations had been ongoing for months, a deal worth $12 billion. Delta pulled out completely, citing reputational concerns and cultural incompatibility. Credit rating agencies downgraded Skywing's debt to junk status. Borrowing costs skyrocketed. Banks demanding higher interest rates or refusing to lend entirely. The financial spiral accelerating beyond anyone's control. Tuesday, the board of directors held another emergency meeting. Keisha Williams presented the reality: accept Isaiah's terms or face potential bankruptcy within 6 months. The choice wasn't difficult anymore. Survival demanded capitulation. Wednesday morning, Skywing accepted every demand. $15 million scholarship fund established, administered by an independent foundation. Public apology with no NDA. Jessica Monroe, Craig Hendricks, Derek Mills, and 17 other employees terminated for cause. Department of Transportation monitor assigned for 5 years with full authority. The settlement was announced at a joint press conference. Keisha Williams and Isaiah Thompson standing together, not exactly allies but united in commitment to change. Isaiah donated his portion of the settlement, $1.2 million, directly to Jerome Washington. He called Jerome personally. There's money coming to you. Enough to get back on your feet, start over, rebuild. Jerome's voice broke over the phone. Dr. Thompson, you didn't have to do this. Yes, I did. You risked everything to do the right thing. You lost your career, your home, your marriage because you refused to commit fraud. You deserve this and more. I don't know what to say. Say you'll keep fighting. Keep telling the truth. Keep holding people accountable. That's how you honor what you sacrificed. 2 weeks later, Jerome was hired by United Airlines as senior maintenance supervisor, better position than he'd had at Skywing, better pay, better benefits. His expertise valued finally, his integrity rewarded instead of punished. Congressional hearings began in Washington. Senate Aviation Safety Subcommittee. Isaiah testified for 4 hours, calm and professional, presenting evidence of fraud and recommendations for reform. Senator Collins from Maine asked the critical question, Dr. Thompson, in your professional opinion, what should happen to Skywing Airlines? Isaiah considered carefully before answering. Senator, safety must come first, always. Profit cannot override human life. If Skywing can prove they've fundamentally reformed their culture, implemented genuine oversight, and demonstrated consistent compliance, they deserve a second chance. Aviation is too important to destroy a company that can be saved. But if they fail again, if any evidence emerges of continued fraud or discrimination, they should lose their operating certificate permanently. No third chances for putting lives at risk. The measured response earned respect even from Skywing's remaining defenders. Isaiah wasn't seeking revenge. He was demanding accountability proportional to harm. Justice, not destruction. The hearings led directly to federal legislation, the Aviation Safety and Passenger Rights Act. Comprehensive reform requiring independent safety inspections, whistleblower protections with financial rewards, anti-discrimination measures with enforcement mechanisms, passenger advocate positions at every airline. The bill passed with overwhelming bipartisan support. Signed into law by the President 8 months after Isaiah was dragged off Flight 2847. Fastest major aviation safety legislation in 40 years. But Isaiah paid a personal price for his stand. Death threats arrived daily. Anonymous emails, social media messages, letters to his office. You destroyed a company. Thousands lost jobs because of you. Hope you're proud of yourself. Some threats were specific enough that FBI assigned him protective detail. People who'd lost Skywing stock value, employees who'd been laid off during the crisis, conspiracy theorists who saw him as part of some government overreach plot. His mother called, worried. Baby, I'm so proud of you. But I'm scared for you too. Mom, I had to do what was right. People's lives were at stake. I know. Just promise me you'll be careful. He couldn't walk through airports anymore without recognition. Some people thanked him, approaching with gratitude and respect. Others glared with pure hatred, seeing him as the villain who destroyed their airline. Public opinion split sharply. Progressive voices praised him as a hero who exposed corporate fraud and racism. Conservative commentators criticized him for overreach that cost jobs and disrupted travel. Cable news debates raged nightly. Isaiah avoided media, focused on his work. But FAA Director Margaret Chen had other plans. Isaiah, I'm offering you a position. Director of Aviation Safety Compliance, cabinet-level appointment reporting directly to the Secretary of Transportation. He hesitated. Margaret, I'm a consultant, not a bureaucrat. You're the only person in America with the moral authority to reform this system from the inside. You proved you can't be bought, intimidated, or silenced. You've got the expertise, the integrity, and the public credibility. We need you. Isaiah thought about the 3 crew members who died in the 2008 crash. About 198 passengers who survived Flight 2847. About Jerome Washington and countless other whistleblowers punished for honesty. He accepted the position. Vowed to transform aviation safety culture across the entire industry. Make what happened to him impossible for anyone else. 1 year passed. Part 9, Widespread Impact. Isaiah's case triggered a transformation that rippled through American aviation like shockwaves from an earthquake. The Aviation Safety and Passenger Rights Act became law exactly 1 year and 2 days after he was dragged off Flight 2847. The legislation was comprehensive, addressing every failure his case had exposed. Independent safety inspections required quarterly for all commercial aircraft, performed by auditors with no financial ties to the airlines. Whistleblower protections strengthened dramatically, with financial rewards for anyone reporting fraud, and severe penalties for retaliation. Anti-discrimination measures mandated statistical tracking of passenger removals by race, with federal investigations triggered automatically when disparities exceeded established thresholds. Every airline required to employ independent passenger advocates with authority to override crew decisions and investigate complaints. The bill passed the Senate 89-11. House approval was even more lopsided, 372-63. President signed it in a Rose Garden ceremony, with Isaiah standing behind her as she put pen to paper. This law exists because one man refused to be silenced, the president said. Dr. Isaiah Thompson could have accepted a settlement, taken the money, moved on with his life. Instead, he fought for systemic change. He fought for accountability. He fought for every passenger who'll board an aircraft in the future, trusting that safety comes first. This is how democracy should work. Citizens demanding better, institutions responding with reform. But the law was just the beginning. Cultural transformation followed in ways no legislation could mandate. 3 more airlines discovered falsified maintenance records during internal audits. Rather than hide the problems, they self-reported to the FAA, implemented corrective measures, accepted fines and oversight. The cost of covering up fraud now exceeded the cost of honesty. Industry-wide shift toward transparency. Airlines publishing monthly safety reports. Maintenance logs available for public inspection. Whistleblower hotlines advertised prominently. The culture of secrecy crumbling under pressure from regulators, passengers, and employees emboldened by legal protections. Aviation maintenance programs at technical schools saw enrollment increase 300%. Students inspired by Isaiah's story, wanting to be the next generation of professionals who put safety first. The scholarship fund he'd established sent its first cohort of 20 students to flight school, all from underrepresented minorities, all passionate about aviation safety. Jerome Washington became an instructor at one of those programs, teaching the next generation of mechanics about integrity, accountability, and the courage to refuse illegal orders. But Isaiah paid ongoing personal costs that no victory could erase. The death threats continued, though less frequently. FBI caught 3 individuals planning actual violence. 2 served prison time. 1 accepted a plea deal for psychiatric treatment. The protective detail remained, federal agents shadowing Isaiah's movements, a constant reminder that doing the right thing made him a target. His personal life suffered. Divorced for 12 years, no children, he'd always focused on work over relationships. Now even work relationships became complicated. Some colleagues treated him as a hero, others as a troublemaker who disrupted the comfortable status quo. Walking through airports became surreal. Recognition everywhere. Some passengers approached with thanks, sharing stories of how his reforms had made them feel safer. Others muttered insults, blamed him for higher ticket prices as airlines passed on increased safety costs. The polarization was exhausting. Cable news reduced a complex story of institutional failure to simple narratives. Left-wing commentators praised him as a civil rights champion. Right-wing pundits criticized him as government overreach personified. Everyone had an opinion. Few understood the nuance. Isaiah largely avoided media after the first year. Did his job quietly, reviewed safety reports, recommended reforms, testified at hearings when required. Tried to let the work speak louder than the controversy. But Margaret Chin kept pushing him toward larger impact. The Director of Aviation Safety Compliance position came with real power. Budget authority, regulatory authority, direct line to the Secretary of Transportation and the President when necessary. "You're the only person who can say no to airline lobbying and make it stick," Margaret told him. "Use that power." He did. Blocked 3 proposed regulatory rollbacks that would have weakened safety requirements. Imposed record fines on 2 airlines caught falsifying inspection records even after the new law took effect. Personally reviewed every whistleblower complaint, ensuring protection and appropriate investigation. His reputation grew as someone absolutely uncompromising on safety. Airlines feared him. Passengers trusted him. Politicians couldn't touch him because his credibility was bulletproof. Meanwhile, Skywing struggled to rebuild from the rubble of its collapse. Market share dropped from 18% to 11%. Routes sold to competitors. Fleet size reduced from 293 aircraft to 187. Workforce downsized from 48,000 employees to 31,000. Keisha Williams worked tirelessly to restore credibility. Implemented the strictest safety standards in the industry, exceeding federal requirements. Published monthly transparency reports detailing every maintenance action, every safety issue, every passenger complaint and its resolution. Passenger satisfaction scores slowly improved. Skywing became known for safety and accountability, ironically becoming the industry leader in the very areas where it had previously failed most catastrophically. Financial recovery was harder. Stock price stabilized but remained 40% below pre-crash levels. Credit rating improved from junk to investment grade, but borrowing remained expensive. Profitability returned after 18 months but margins stayed razor-thin. The federal monitor assigned to oversee operations was ruthless. Former Air Force Colonel Patricia Mendez, 61 years old, 3 decades of military aviation experience, zero tolerance for shortcuts. She grounded aircraft for minor issues. Imposed operational restrictions when procedures weren't followed perfectly. Made it clear that one mistake could trigger complete shutdown. Skywing employees hated the oversight. Complained about micromanagement, excessive caution, competitive disadvantage. But Keisha backed Colonel Mendez completely. We earn back trust through perfect compliance. Not 99%. 100%. Jessica Monroe, the flight attendant who'd started everything, gave an interview to NPR 1 year after her termination. She'd spent the year in therapy, enrolled in graduate school studying social psychology and implicit bias, working with anti-racism organizations. I was trained to see certain passengers as threats, she told the interviewer. Not explicitly racial training, but cultural messaging that added up to the same thing. Young black men were potential security risks. Black women were potentially aggressive. The company culture was us versus them, and black passengers were always them. Do you take responsibility for what you did to Dr. Thompson? Long pause. Yes. Completely. I could have questioned my own assumptions. I could have treated him like I treated white passengers with similar bags. I chose to see him as a problem. That's on me. Have you spoken to him since? No. I wrote him letters apologizing, but I don't know if he reads them. I don't expect forgiveness. I just hope he knows I'm spending my life trying to prevent others from making my mistakes. Isaiah did read her letters. Every one. Filed them away without responding. Forgiveness was complicated. She'd been a symptom of systemic disease, but symptoms still caused harm. He'd forgiven her for his own peace of mind, but that didn't require maintaining contact or absolving her of responsibility. 1-year anniversary of the incident approached. Aviation Safety Conference in Chicago, 2,200 industry professionals attending. Isaiah invited as keynote speaker. He stood at the podium looking out at a sea of faces. Pilots, mechanics, safety inspectors, airline executives, regulators, academics. All there because aviation safety mattered to them. Standing ovation before he said a single word. 3 minutes of applause. Isaiah waited, uncomfortable with the adulation, until it finally subsided. 1 year ago, I was dragged off an airplane for being black and doing my job. Today, I stand before you not seeking sympathy, but demanding continued accountability. He let the words sink in. Every person in this room has a choice, every single day. Profit or people. Convenience or conscience. Efficiency or safety. We cannot allow cost-cutting to compromise the systems that keep passengers alive. We cannot allow bias, conscious or unconscious, to cloud our judgment about who belongs on an aircraft. We cannot allow corporate culture to value stock prices over human lives. 1 year ago, I made a choice. I chose to stand up, even when it cost me my dignity, my peace, my sense of security in public spaces. I chose accountability over acceptance. Justice over comfort. I'm asking you to make the same choice. Not once, but every day. Every inspection you perform. Every passenger you interact with. Every decision you make where safety and profit conflict. Choose correctly. Choose consistently. Choose courageously. Because one day, you might be the person who prevents a catastrophe. You might be the mechanic who refuses to sign a false inspection. You might be the flight attendant who treats every passenger with dignity. You might be the executive who says no to cost-cutting that endangers lives. And when that day comes, I hope you remember that doing the right thing is worth the cost. Always. The speech went viral. 300 million views across social media platforms. Shared by aviation professionals worldwide. Became required viewing at flight schools and maintenance training programs. Applications to aviation safety programs increased 300% within 6 months. Diversity in aviation careers improved dramatically. The scholarship fund Isaiah established sent its first graduating class of 20 students into the industry, all hired immediately, all committed to upholding the highest standards. Jerome Washington taught them personally. Dr. Thompson saved my life by giving me purpose again. Now you carry that forward. Be mechanics who can't be corrupted. Be professionals who can't be intimidated. Be the people who make aviation safer for everyone. The transformation was real, measurable, lasting. Fatal crashes related to maintenance fraud dropped to zero across the entire industry. Safety records reached historic highs. Passenger confidence in aviation safety increased significantly. But the work was never finished. New threats emerged. New cost pressures. New temptations to cut corners. Isaiah remained vigilant, knowing that safety required eternal attention. He'd changed an industry. Saved countless lives. Forced accountability where corruption had thrived. But the personal cost lingered in ways victory couldn't heal. 3 years later, the final chapter was still being written. 3 years after being dragged off Flight 2847, Isaiah Thompson sat in his office at the Department of Transportation. 55 years old now, the gray at his temples more pronounced, lines around his eyes deeper from stress and scrutiny. The office walls displayed certificates and commendations. Photo with the president at the bill signing. Awards from aviation safety organizations. Honorary degrees from 3 universities. Recognition from civil rights groups. Evidence of impact, achievement, transformation. But one photo dominated his desk. 3 faces smiling at the camera. The crew members who died in the 2008 crash that changed his life forever. Captain Rodriguez, First Officer Kim, Flight Engineer Patterson. Daily reminder of why this work mattered more than comfort or convenience. His assistant knocked, opened the door partway. Dr. Thompson, you have a visitor. She doesn't have an appointment, but she says it's important. Isaiah looked up from the safety report he was reviewing. Who is it? Jessica Monroe. The name hit him like unexpected turbulence. He hadn't seen her since that day 3 years ago. Hadn't responded to her letters. Hadn't sought contact or closure. Send her in. Jessica entered slowly, nervous. 3 years had changed her too. 31 now, hair shorter, dressed professionally but without the airline uniform. She looked older, humbled, carrying the weight of what she'd done. Dar. Thompson, I know I have no right to be here. Isaiah gestured to the chair across from his desk. "Sit down, Ms. Monroe." She sat, hands clasped tightly in her lap. "I've spent 3 years trying to understand what I did and why I did it. Therapy twice a week. Anti-racism courses. Reading everything I could about implicit bias and systemic discrimination. Volunteering with civil rights organizations." Isaiah listened without expression, giving her nothing. "I was raised in a small town in Pennsylvania. 97% white. The only black people I saw were on television or passing through. I was taught, not explicitly but through 1,000 small messages, to fear people who looked different from me. To see them as other, as potentially dangerous." She met his eyes, forcing herself to hold his gaze. The airline training reinforced those fears, made them seem professional and justified. "We were taught to watch for certain behaviors, certain appearances, certain patterns. And somehow those patterns always seemed to apply more to black and brown passengers than white ones. But it was just racism, Dr. Thompson. Dressed up in corporate policy and safety procedures. And I participated in it. I enforced it. I called security on you because I saw a black man who questioned my authority, and that felt threatening in a way it wouldn't have if you'd been white." Isaiah's voice was quiet. "Why are you really here, Ms. Monroe?" Tears welled in her eyes. "To say I'm sorry. To ask for your forgiveness. Not because I deserve it, but because I need you to know I understand the harm I caused." Silence filled the office. Outside, traffic hummed along Constitution Avenue. Inside, 2 people sat with the weight of history between them. "I forgave you 3 years ago," Isaiah said finally. Jessica's eyes widened, shocked. "What?" "I forgave you before you apologized, before you did any of this work. I forgave you because holding on to that anger would have destroyed me, not you." "I don't understand." Isaiah leaned back in his chair. "Forgiveness doesn't mean what you did was acceptable. It doesn't mean there are no consequences. It doesn't mean I've forgotten or that we're friends now. It means I refuse to let your actions define the rest of my life." Jessica was crying openly now. "Thank you. Don't thank me. Just keep doing the work. Keep telling the truth about how systemic racism operates. Keep fighting the corporate cultures that enable discrimination. Keep training people to recognize their own biases. That's how you honor what happened. Not with apologies, but with action." She nodded, unable to speak. "Are you working now?" Isaiah asked. "Yes. I train airline employees on anti-discrimination and de-escalation. I tell my story, our story, hoping it prevents this from happening to someone else. Some airlines don't want to hear it. Others are genuinely trying to change. I work with the ones who are serious about reform." "Good. That's meaningful work." Jessica stood to leave, then hesitated. "Dr. Thompson, one more thing. I want you to know that watching you, seeing how you've transformed this industry, changed laws, saved lives, all while dealing with threats and hatred, it's shown me what real courage looks like. You could have taken the money and disappeared. Instead, you fought for something bigger than yourself. That's heroic." Isaiah shook his head slightly. "I'm not a hero, Ms. Monroe. I'm just someone who refused to accept injustice. That should be normal, not heroic." She left quietly, closing the door behind her. Isaiah sat alone, processing the encounter. Forgiveness was complicated. She was genuinely trying to change, doing important work, taking responsibility. But the wound she'd inflicted still ached in ways 3 years couldn't heal. His phone rang. Margaret Chen. "Isaiah, we have a situation. Small regional airline, possible maintenance falsifications. Whistleblower came forward this morning. I'm sending you the preliminary report." Isaiah pulled up his email, scanned the documents. Similar pattern to skywing. Cost cutting leading to corner cutting. Mechanics pressure to rush inspections. Records that didn't match reality. Margaret, protect the whistleblower first. Make sure they don't end up like Jerome did. Legal protections, financial support if needed, witness security if appropriate. Already on it. We learned from last time. Good. I'll review the evidence and have recommendations by end of day. Isaiah, you know this will never completely stop, right? There will always be someone trying to cut corners, prioritize profit over safety. You can't fix human nature. No. But I can make it harder to get away with. I can make the consequences severe enough that most people choose honesty. I can create systems where whistleblowers are protected and fraud is detected. That's enough. He hung up and grabbed his briefcase. Same briefcase from 3 years ago, repaired and reinforced after the documents spilled across that aircraft cabin. Physical reminder of where this journey started. Heading out to continue the work. Another investigation, another airline, another battle in the endless war for safety and accountability. Final scene, 4 hours later, Isaiah walked through Ronald Reagan National Airport. Evening rush, terminals packed with travelers heading home or starting trips. Passengers everywhere recognized him now. Some just stared. Others approached. A young black girl, maybe 12 years old, ran up with her father following. Dr. Thompson. You're Dr. Thompson. Isaiah knelt down to her level. I am. What's your name? Destiny. I want to be a pilot because of you. My teacher showed us your speech in class. You said we should choose courage, and I want to be brave like you. Isaiah's throat tightened with emotion. Then be the best pilot you can be, Destiny. Study hard, work harder, and remember that safety always comes first. Can you promise me that? I promise. Her father shook Isaiah's hand, eyes shining with gratitude. Thank you for everything you've done. My daughter sees possibilities now that I never had growing up. That's because of you. It's because of her courage and your support. I just opened a door. She's the one who has to walk through it. Isaiah boarded his flight to Chicago, another regional airline safety conference. The crew treated him with respect that bordered on reverence. Not because they feared him, but because they genuinely appreciated what he represented. The captain made an announcement as passengers settled in. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a very special passenger aboard this evening. Dr. Isaiah Thompson, whose dedication to aviation safety has made flying safer for all of us. Dr. Thompson, on behalf of the entire crew and everyone in this industry who takes pride in their work, thank you for your service. Spontaneous applause filled the cabin. Isaiah smiled awkwardly, uncomfortable with public recognition but grateful for the sentiment. Passengers who'd probably seen the video, read the stories, understood what his fight had cost and what it had accomplished. The flight took off smoothly. Perfectly maintained aircraft, professional crew, systems working exactly as designed. Isaiah worked during the flight, reviewing maintenance logs for the regional airline under investigation. Found no issues worth flagging. This airline was doing it right, putting safety first, following regulations, treating employees fairly. They landed safely in Chicago. Isaiah's phone buzzed with messages as the aircraft taxied to the gate. Jerome Washington. Boss, got promoted to chief instructor at the academy. Teaching 40 students this semester. Half of them are your scholarship recipients. They're hungry to learn and committed to excellence. You should be proud. Another message from one of those students, Dr. T, I passed my commercial pilot exam today. First person in my family to fly an aircraft. Couldn't have done it without your scholarship and your example. I promise to honor that by being the safest, most professional pilot I can be. Isaiah smiled, genuine satisfaction warming his chest. This was the real victory. Not the laws passed or the airlines punished, but the lives changed and the culture shifted. Young people entering aviation with commitment to integrity, safety, and justice. He walked through O'Hare International, anonymous among thousands of travelers. All of them safer because one man refused to stay silent when he was wronged. Because one man turned humiliation into transformation. Because one man chose justice over comfort, accountability over acceptance, courage over fear. The airline he'd helped bring down was rebuilding, better and safer than before. The industry he'd challenged was now stronger, more transparent, more committed to the principles that should have always guided it. The people he'd inspired were changing aviation from within. And somewhere, on a flight preparing for departure, a young black woman completed her pre-flight checklist with meticulous care. First officer, 2 years out of flight school, scholarship recipient, one of 20 students whose dreams became possible because Isaiah Thompson fought for something bigger than himself. She reviewed every item twice. Checked systems thoroughly. Refused to rush despite pressure to depart on time. Safety first, always. Just like she'd been taught. Just like Dr. Thompson had demanded of the entire industry. The transformation was real. The work was ongoing. The fight never truly ended. But progress was undeniable. Isaiah Thompson walked through the terminal, carrying his repaired briefcase, heading to another conference, another battle, another opportunity to make flying safer for everyone. Not a hero. Just a man who refused to accept injustice. Who turned personal violation into systemic reform. Who proved that one person with courage and conviction could change an entire industry. The end. But also, truly, just the beginning. So let me ask you, what's the most powerful lesson from Isaiah's story? Is it about standing up for what's right even when it costs everything? Is it about how systemic change requires individual courage? Or is it about the importance of accountability in every system we trust with our lives? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And here's my question for you. If you witnessed injustice like this, would you have the courage to fight back the way Isaiah did, knowing it might cost you your career, your peace, your safety? Comment number 1 if you believe you would stand up, and share your reasoning. If this story moved you, inspired you, or made you think differently about courage and justice, smash that like button. Subscribe to this channel so you never miss stories about ordinary people doing extraordinary things when faced with impossible choices. Share this with someone who needs to hear that standing up for what's right is always worth the cost. Thank you for watching, for engaging, for caring about these stories. In a world that often rewards silence and compliance, be like Isaiah Thompson. Choose courage. Demand accountability. Never stop fighting for what's right. Until next time, stay brave, stay principled, and remember that one person really can change the world. Dar. Isaiah Thompson's story teaches us that courage means standing firm in your principles even when the entire system pressures you to back down. His journey reveals that systemic change doesn't happen through silence or compliance, but through individuals willing to sacrifice personal comfort for collective justice. We learn that expertise and credentials mean nothing if we lack the moral backbone to use them for good. Isaiah could have accepted the settlement, taken the money, and disappeared into comfortable anonymity. Instead, he chose the harder path of accountability and reform. The story demonstrates that institutional racism and corporate corruption often intertwine, both rooted in prioritizing profit and power over people and principle. When airlines value stock prices over passenger safety, when employees enforce policies differently based on skin color, the entire system becomes corrupted. Real transformation requires not just punishing individual bad actors, but dismantling the cultures that enable and reward their behavior. Perhaps most importantly, we learn that forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting or excusing harm. Isaiah forgave Jessica Monroe for his own peace, but he didn't absolve the system that trained her to see black passengers as threats. True justice requires both personal healing and structural reform. One person speaking truth to power can trigger massive change, but sustaining that change requires collective commitment from everyone who believes safety, dignity, and equality matter more than convenience or profit. What resonates most with you from Isaiah's incredible journey? Was it his refusal to be silenced by money and threats? His commitment to protecting future passengers even while dealing with personal trauma? Or the way he transformed humiliation into industry-wide reform? I want to hear your perspective. Comment below and tell me, if you were in Isaiah's position, would you have fought back knowing it meant death threats, public scrutiny, and constant security concerns? What would you have done differently? And here's the big question, do you think corporate America has truly learned from this, or are companies still choosing profit over people? If this story inspired you, hit that like button right now. Subscribe to this channel for more true stories about ordinary people who refuse to accept injustice and change the world because of it. Share this video with someone who needs to remember that courage isn't the absence of fear, but the choice to do what's right despite the cost. Thank you for spending time with Isaiah's story today. Thank you for caring about justice, safety, and accountability. In a world that often rewards silence and compliance, be the person who speaks up. Be the one who demands better. Be the change you want to see. Until next time, stay courageous, stay principled, and never forget that your voice matters. One person really can make a difference. You could be that person. Safe travels, and see you in the next story.